Okay, here we are. Here we are live. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our first episode of Data Jazzers. And basically, why we started this after a lot of chats and discussions Nicola and I did together, we decided to start this kind of an informal webcast where we will give you opportunity to get to know some of the best data minds in the world. And what we are, sorry, have some trouble with, yeah. So, and we decided to go a little bit differently around, try to introduce you to greatest Power BI minds around and from a little different perspective. So to offer you to get to know them a bit more personally, chat with them about their passion for technology and their opinions around Power BI and data in general. Who are we? So my friend and colleague Nicola is probably more famous with his nickname Data Mozart, which he uses when he blogs and speaks around Power BI. He is not a classical music compositor, as far as I know, but rather giving his homage to Salzburg, Austria, where he lives and where the Mozart was born. And what he is trying to do is actually providing you a great music from his data compositions. Nicola, welcome.
Thanks, my friend. Thanks, and now my friend Augustin. So he's not just a recognized Power BI expert, especially when it comes to topics of data governance, data culture, and establishing Power BI Center of Excellence, but also a person responsible for running what is, in my humble opinion, a Power BI user group with the highest number of top quality sessions on the planet, and the competition is really high. So if you check Stuttgart Power BI user group YouTube channel, you will find a bunch of amazing sessions delivered by really true Power BI experts, and therefore I wanted to especially thank Augustin for everything he does for the Power BI community.
Thanks, Nicola.
Yeah.
Just to put it that I didn't pay you for this word, so.
You will pay me. No problem. Yeah, but enough about us. We have someone very special joining Data Jazzers today, and our guest is the person behind the blog, which is used by all of us, literally in Microsoft BI world, for more than 10 years, I would say. He is a Power Query and Power BI guru and a principal program manager in Power BI customer advisory team. His name is Chris Webb. Chris, welcome. Many thanks for saving some time for us. And although most people know you well, can you please tell a few words about yourself? And is it okay first that we called you Power Query and Power BI guru?
You can call me whatever you want. I wish I was a guru, but yeah, any flattering names you want to use, I'm happy to take. Okay. So yeah, my name's Chris Webb. I work on the Power BI customer advisory team at Microsoft now, which is a team kind of inside the Power BI product group that helps large customers be successful with Power BI and takes their feedback back to the rest of the Power BI product group. So, a lot of my job is being with customers, solving difficult technical problems and giving them advice, and then going back to having lots of meetings with program managers, the people who actually build the product, and complaining to them and telling them they need to add a particular feature or they need to improve things and so on. So I'm not somebody who builds the product. I'm just somebody there to be the voice of the customer on the product group. If you ever watch the Muppet Show, those two old men. You're old enough to watch the Muppet Show, yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Those two old men, Stadler and Waldorf, who sit in the balcony.
Always on the balcony,
yeah. So that's kind of what the role of the Power BI cat team is. We kind of like shout from the back, from the sidelines.
Okay, that's good to know, and a good analogy. I like it. Okay, so yeah, let me start with. So we did a small investigation, and your first blog post came on, should I say the year? So someone maybe thinks that you are younger than, but yeah, it was on December 31st, 2004. So like more than 17 years ago, and it was tuning year-to-date style calculations in SQL Server Analysis Services. And first few years of your blogging was almost exclusively dedicated to analysis services and MDX. So now, if someone follows your blog carefully, it's almost exclusively, let's say, Power Query and topics related to Power Query. So how that transition came? I mean, okay, in 2004 we didn't have Power Query, but what were the intermediate steps that you took so to switch to from let's say MDX to now to M and similar stuff?
So, I mean, I think this kind of goes back to the philosophy of the blog, which is just me writing down the interesting things that I learn. And so, as I change the technologies that I work with, it's always been Microsoft BI. That's what I blog about. You know, when I do something interesting on a project with a customer, you know, learn something from one of the people that I work with. You know, there's a ton of really great people on the Power BI CAT team. There are a ton of super, super clever people on the Power BI product group who I spend a lot of time writing emails to. But every time I learn something, I have to write it down, you know, simply because if I don't write it down, I forget about it. And, you know, recently, I was preparing a presentation for SQL Bits on Power Query performance tuning. And I thought, oh, I'll just go back through all my old blog posts on this subject and see what I've written about. And there are some things that I've blogged about that I just can't remember. And I was thinking, wow, this is really interesting. I completely forgot I knew this. So, you know, the reason is that I just have to write down what I know about. Now, back in 2004, I'd already been working with analysis services for about 5 years. And I back in those days, it was 2004. It was a long time ago, and news groups were where it was at. You know, everybody asked and answered questions on news groups, and I was very active answering questions on what was it, Microsoft.SQLServer.olap. I think that was the news group, and you know, I think anybody that answers questions always finds that they're answering the same question over and over again. And I thought, well, why don't I just write down the answer once, and then the next time somebody answers the same question, I will, you know, I'll just put it there. And if somebody asks an interesting question and I learn something while answering it, then I'll write it down, and then again I can just link to it. So yeah, it was 2003, 2004. Blogs were like the hot new technology. And I thought, oh, I need to get a blog. Moshe Pasimansky, who was then one of the kind of lead developers on the analysis services engine, he had just started blogging. And I thought, oh, wow, this is great. So yeah, all of these things meant that I was going to start a blog. And yeah, I just took it from there. I just thought, well, every time I learn something, I'll put it down on my blog. And yeah, those first couple of years, I was working full-time doing analysis services. When I started the blog, I was in a kind of full-time job doing analysis services development for a company. And then in 2006, I decided to set up as a consultant doing analysis services work. And yeah, that's when it became a little bit more important to blog, because I started learning more things. And I found that even if I didn't plan it, and I didn't realize it at the time, I found that my blog was the main way I was doing marketing. So, you know, if I was going to find customers, then they would find me through my blog. So it became not only just a good way of learning things, but a good way of attracting customers. I mean, I can remember just before I left to become a consultant and set up my own company, the guy I was working with, who was also a really, really great analysis services person, he turned around and said, "Chris, you're going to have to stop blogging." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, why would anybody hire you as a consultant when you write down everything you know? And I just didn't have a good answer, because he was right. Why would anybody hire me as a consultant when you can just go to my blog and get
and read everything
that I've learned? But what I learned was that, people will read your blog and they will kind of think, yeah, he knows what he's talking about. And even if I had blogged about their exact problem, they would still pay me money to go and solve it. And I guess that's exactly what everybody else discovered in the next couple of years. People like people who did the same thing but so much more effectively than I did. People like Brent Ozar, people like Marco and Alberto, who have built up much bigger businesses than I ever did, simply from giving away loads and loads of really great content. So yeah, I mean, I was doing a lot of analysis services, multidimensional, for a long time. Then we get to 2010, 2011. That's when Power Pivot came along, and DAX and Tabular, and then we had Power Query. And I have to say, I liked DAX, but it wasn't as good as MDX. I always preferred MDX. But then when Power Query came along, I really loved Power Query. I completely fell in love with Power Query. And
what actually, when you're talking about DAX now, still comparing with MDX, your book was one of the Bibles for MDX back in the time when MDX was completely actual. But what got you into DAX? So a few weeks back or 2 weeks back, Marco was with Casper de Jong also on a webcast, and he mentioned that he was chatting with a product team in Seattle and showcased the entire thing. So what was your trigger to switch from MDX, where you were established author and consultant, to a new technology back then as DAX was?
Commercial necessity. I knew that if I didn't do it, then somebody else would. And in fact, I didn't do it that well, and that's when Marco and Alberto got the whole market for DAX. Because I was well established with MDX, and I spent too much time with it. And Marco and Alberto jumped on DAX, learnt it way better than I ever did, and built up a great business from doing that. But you have to you have to learn the new technology, because that's the way the market's going. And it was clear that the future was Tabular and the future was DAX. So it was it's not something that I didn't like. I mean, I love DAX, and I see exactly why people love DAX more than MDX. But it was just, if you're in the business of doing consulting and training, you've got to learn the new technology, because that's what people want to do consulting on, and that's what people want to do training on.
Yeah, looking just at the YouTube chat as well. So people are blogging how many times your blogs save their asses when doing a lot of projects. So I think looking from that perspective, it's a great retrospective also for you to see how many people you actually helped, even without paid work all the time, but people are really using it.
Yeah, I mean, it's always great to meet people who read my blog, and I'm massively humbled that people read it. I mean, when I look back at the beginning of my blog, some of the posts there are really embarrassingly bad. I had no idea, but then again, that was when blogging was new. Nobody knew how to brand your content. Nobody knew what was a good blog post or what wasn't. So looking back, it was a bit embarrassing, some of the early stuff, but there was always, I guess, something useful there, because it was something I'd found useful. Going forward, I think there's it's something that, like I said, I got into the habit of blogging every time I learned something new, but I also got into the habit of making sure I wrote at least one thing every week, every 7 days, and that forces me to learn something new every week and then write it down. And something that's really kind of a hot topic at the moment is this idea of micro habits, of doing something small on a regular basis that builds up. And yeah, I mean, it takes perhaps 2-3 hours of my time every week to write my blog, to understand what it is that I'm going to write about and then write it down. But it's good for me, and I'm great. I'm always happy that it helps somebody else.
Yeah, you're keeping up the pace still. So once per week. I liked what you said, that that forces you to learn new things every week. So that's a really good message, I'd say. Okay.
Because there's always things that I'm curious about. I mean, sometimes I'll find something, and I'm talking to a customer, or I'm talking to someone like Akshay or Marius or Jeffrey, and I'll learn something really interesting. I think, oh wow, I better write that down. But then sometimes that doesn't happen in a week. But there are always things. I mean, I have a OneNote page with literally a couple of hundred bullet points on it of things that I've thought of that I want to check out for a blog post. And I've got this long list, and there is always something on there that I had an idea about that I didn't have time to check out. And, if I don't have something that I know I need to write about, I'll just look at that and think, that was an interesting idea. I wonder about that. And then I spend about an hour testing it out, and then an hour working out how to write it, and then an hour just actually writing the blog post. So
do you actually schedule yourself a time for a blog, or when you get an inspiration, you just do it?
I'm now in the habit of doing it every Sunday evening. So that's a time when I know I'm not going to be doing anything else for work, or I can just sit down with my laptop, in the lounge at home, and my wife's watching something on TV that I'm not interested in watching. So I can just sit down and do it there. In the past, when I worked for myself, I used to travel a lot. So that meant that I was in hotel rooms in the evening on my own, with just a laptop. So it was a good time to kind of do my blogging then.
Yeah, makes sense. The one thing I wanted to ask you, so you were working for a long time as a consultant, and you already mentioned it before you joined Microsoft. So how does it look like? Okay, you explained this with analogy with Muppet Show and then things like this, but recently I read a article from Matthew Roche, who wrote that he was explaining the different perspectives of being a car driver versus engineering the car engine. So this is something like you work with the product when you are a consultant, of course, and then you are kind of responsible for building and improving the product itself. So how does it look from your perspective, this comparison?
So I always think Matthew does a great job of trying to describe what we do on the Power BI CAT team. Everybody does something different, and we've all got a lot of interesting. We've all got our own specific areas that we're good at, and I mean across the whole team we've got some really great experience. For things that I'm interested in, I like Power Query. I like Power BI Excel integration. I tend to deal with European customers, so it's kind of like that. But at the same time, we need a bit of structure, and Matthew, I think, is one of the people on the team who really brings that structure and thinks about what we do, and helps take everybody with their own interests, kind of, and funnel the feedback that we get and the experience we've got into something useful and structured for the rest of the Power BI product group. So, I mean, I have total respect for Matthew and what he does. I know that if I was to try and do his job, I would be absolutely terrible at it. In fact, I think most people would be terrible at it. And Matthew's superpower is that he is just really, really great at structure and thinking about how people provide feedback. And he's built some amazing processes inside the Power BI CAT team. And I think, some of those processes and the feedback processes we've set up, that he set up, are part of the reason why Power BI is successful. Because, I think one of the things I've kind of learned inside Microsoft, and I kind of knew before, is that nobody really knows how everybody uses Power BI. it's such a vast product. There are so many millions of people who use it that everybody is going to have a slightly different experience. And you talk to some people and they'll know the product really well, and they'll kind of think that they know not every, they won't know, they know they don't know everything technically about Power BI, but they feel like they know about how everybody uses Power BI because they've got their customers, they know where they work, and in those customers, in those countries, in those situations, Power BI is used in a certain way. And they'll get really frustrated and say, oh, why don't you have this feature? I really need this. Every customer I work with needs this feature. Why don't you have it? It's stupid. You're forgetting things. But, the thing you really learn inside Microsoft is that there is so much diversity. There are so many different ways that things are used inside Power BI that you can't, you've got to prioritize. You've got to look and see. You've got to get a kind of a range of opinion from big customers to medium customers to small customers to European customers to US customers to really centralized corporate BI scenarios to completely decentralized self-service BI scenarios. And, some things there are like, common threads. There are things that a large number of customers need, and we can prioritize those. But generally speaking, there's just a ton of diversity. There are just completely different ways of using the product, and that's that's really surprising, I think. And it's only from inside Microsoft that you actually get that perspective. I forgot what I was talking about now, but hopefully that all makes sense.
No, that's interesting. You mentioned that there is a difference, for example, between European and US customers. Is it? I don't know if you are allowed to share with us maybe some interesting story or anecdote with what are the difference. I mean, I'm curious. I'm really curious to understand what would be the difference. In that regard, in geography regard, let's say Europe versus US.
Okay, so I mean, you guys work in Austria and Germany, and I would say in my experience, well, I don't have really any experience with Austria, but Germany definitely. BI in Germany tends to be very dominated by the finance department. A lot of BI is done by finance people. And they want to do financial reporting. They want to do charts of accounts. They want to do custom roll-ups and things. And it's like, why isn't Power BI better at doing this? And, we've got custom visuals for doing this, things like the Info River custom visual. There's a couple of companies that, in fact, one I can think of that's based in Germany that specialize in this. And, if that's your world, you think, why does Power BI not do a better job about this? But you compare that with the UK and especially the US, you very, very rarely ever see any finance people doing BI. It's much more likely to be BI for doing kind of regular sales and kind of operational analytics. That's one thing. Again, also, if we kind of pick on Germany is very hesitant about the cloud. I know a lot of customers in Germany prefer to use Power BI report server, and in the UK and in the US, it's actually a tiny minority of customers who use Power BI report server because, hey, why wouldn't you put everything in the cloud? Because the cloud's really great, and that's, if you look out over the world, most countries are very, very pro cloud now. And they don't think about putting their data in the cloud. It's probably safer to put your data in the cloud than have it in an on-prem data center. If Vladimir Putin wants to hack your company's data, he's more likely to be able to hack it in your company's data center than he is in Power BI, I think. But again,
that's true. I know when you're mentioning Germany, I remember just a few years back when Power BI adoption started in Germany. For each and every workshop I attended as a consultant, cloud was probably similar to cursing. So mentioning of cloud, so it was amazing back then.
Yeah. But I mean, to get back to what I was talking about, you can have a great career in Power BI in Germany. You can just work with lots of German customers. All your friends work in the German market, and you look at Power BI and you think, why are they doing this cloud thing when everybody wants on-prem? Which is true of Germany, but not of the whole world.
Yeah, that's fair point. That's fair point.
And when we are now starting digging into Power BI, so from your perspective, both consulting and Microsoft now, so how do you say, if you need to describe in a few sentences Power BI and concepts around it for, I don't know, beginners, intermediate, and advanced users, how would you put it together?
That's a good question, because again, I mean, as somebody, I come from a very technical background. I am not one of these people who've come from a business user background. I'm a kind of traditional IT department person. I mean, all right, all my IT experience is with BI and reporting, but I started off with corporate reporting. I come from I'm definitely an IT department person, not a self-service user. So the thing that I would always emphasize is data modeling. Data modeling for the beginner, data modeling for the intermediate user, data modeling for the advanced user, because it's only once you've modeled the data correctly that you can that everything works after that. But again, kind of going back to what I was saying, if you only ever want to build simple reports and you've just got a couple of tables of data in Excel, you can make Power BI work really well and it'll be fast without even thinking about modeling your data. You can just import the tables you've got. And if it's a small amount of data, who cares? Don't care about the best practices. You can just get straight to the value of what you're doing, of building the report. So, I mean, like I said, I would recommend learning data modeling and making sure your data model's correct. But at the same time, that is exactly the way of thinking that makes people hate corporate BI. It kind of puts unnecessary roadblocks in the way of people doing their job and getting real value from their data. So, that's just my advice. Feel free to ignore it for anybody who's new.
No,
Completely agree. Yeah, especially data modeling. So whenever you grasp around Power BI, and most of the problems are always lying down in a good old-fashioned data modeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It all depends on whether you want to always do something simple or whether you need to go on to the next level and do the more advanced things. But I always felt like I learnt the most working with business users, because it just challenges my assumptions about what the real priorities are. I'm a bit geeky. I enjoy the technical side of things too much, and sometimes you can spend too much time on the technical stuff and not enough time on delivering the real business value.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, I think we all struggled with this. Basically, we also came from technical background, working with relational databases, and then moved to Power BI world. So I feel this pain. Yeah, same here. Okay, so next thing I would like to ask you. So how does it look from your perspective to manage such an important team in such an important product in such an important company? So we are talking about Power BI customer advisory team within Microsoft. As you said, you're obviously a technical person. So as far as I know a lot of technical persons, and then they don't enjoy managing people and go to meetings, stuff like this. So what do you recognize as the biggest challenges in your current role as a manager, and where you are not necessarily responsible, let's say, for technical implementation of Power BI?
Okay. So first of all, I don't manage the whole team. I manage a bit of the team that covers Europe and the rest of the world. Adam Saxton does the same job as me for North America. Matthew Roche, like I said, he's the same kind of level as me. He does lots of great stuff with gathering feedback and running our programs to do that. And Casper de Jong also manages a slightly separate team. So I don't manage the whole team. I've got a couple of people reporting to me. And to be honest, the people I have on my team are all people that most of them are people I hired myself, and we all do the same job. So in a way, I do manage them because they report to me and I'll give them some ideas on how to solve things. But actually, I would say I don't really do much management. I'm just simply there protecting people and letting the people who do work do their job. And I do, I'm still kind of transitioning to being a manager, and I still do a lot of the real hands-on Power BI cat team stuff myself. So there's always more work than we've got available people to handle. I still look after customers in the UK and a few other places. As more and more people join the team, there are more and more countries I don't need to care about. But I'll always still do a little bit of this work as well as being a manager, because I think it helps me be a manager when I understand the job that everybody in my team is doing. I love it too much to be able to give up all the kind of technical side of things. So even if I am a manager, I'm never going to be a kind of a full-time manager. I'm just going to be somebody who manages and then still does a bit of the kind of technical work as well.
Okay, so you still work on technical stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a very flat structure inside the team. We all just get involved in anything that we want to get involved with. And so long as we are adding value to the product, then I think we're generally allowed to get on with whatever we want.
Cool.
So
cool. Thanks.
When we are touching technical now, so let's move then from managerial to your comfort area more. So if you're picking SQL or M for data transformation, which one would you choose and why?
I mean, I would always choose M because I love M. But at the same time, even more so than with DAX, I don't think anybody is ever going to go out and learn M. I think the whole purpose of M is to be a language that nobody needs to learn, because you've got the Power BI, the Power Query editor, which generates all the code. I would say that it's kind of a similar problem to DAX and MDX, but even worse. The reason why I think people find DAX hard to learn, and the reason I spent years and years trying to teach people MDX, and I think the reason people found MDX hard to learn was not because it was difficult. It was because you didn't need to use it every day. Now, with SQL, if you're using SQL to write queries, do data transformation, whatever, you write SQL every day. There's no way of getting around it. There are SQL generation UIs, but they're a bit rubbish. You write SQL. And if you write SQL every day, you learn SQL really well. You get lots of practice at it. It becomes natural. The problem with MDX and DAX is that if you think about an analysis services project or a Power BI project, you don't write MDX or DAX every day. You write it kind of at the end of the project after you've done your modeling, and you write a couple of measures. And that means that there are kind of days and weeks where you don't write MDX and DAX. And, you've got a very small amount of code that you need to write. And you've got a kind of requirement, and you think, oh, wow, I've forgotten how to write DAX. So you do a bit of Googling, you find a blog post, you grab something, you hack it until it works. It works. It's reasonably fast. And then you kind of go away, and then you don't write any more DAX for another couple of weeks. And that means that you're never forced to learn it, which means that it seems a bit strange. It seems a bit difficult to learn. And if you take that idea and you kind of move it towards M, it's even less likely that you would ever write M. if you think about most Power BI developers, it's very likely, even for the most kind of basic Power BI developer, at some point you will have to learn DAX, or you have to write some DAX, because you can't really build anything like a sophisticated Power BI report unless you write some simple measures somewhere. So you're forced to learn it. But with M for data transformation, there are people who can build really, really complex Power BI reports and data sets, and they'll do lots of transformation work, but it'll all be in the Power Query editor, all be done by pressing buttons in the UI, and then you never, ever write any M. So it's not even like you write M every couple of weeks. It might be once a year that you write M. And that means you're even less likely to learn it. And that means that it's even more complicated and scary. So I don't think it's fair to kind of compare M and SQL. SQL will always be a more popular language for doing data transformations because more people know it, and more people know it really well because there are jobs where you have to spend every day learning SQL. I love M. I love M a lot, and there are always going to be obscure scenarios where you need to learn M, but I can't ever recommend that somebody learns M as a kind of career skill because it's pretty obscure unless you're going to be a Power BI consultant, and probably in a team of Power BI consultants be the person who specializes in Power Query. You're probably never going to need to learn M. But that's why Power Query is successful. The UI is so good, you don't need to learn the scripting language underneath it in most cases.
That's true. And while you were talking, I'm thinking I did an enormous amount of interviews for Power BI developers, and I think nobody ever mentioned I'm strong in M. So people are strong in DAX, data modeling, a lot of things, but nobody explicitly said M. And you gave now a great comparison of why.
Yeah,
I'm good at clicking. I'm clicking good. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so the next question I wanted to ask you, but I think you already scratched the surface, is SQL service analysis services multidimensional or tabular? And you mentioned at some point that you understood that tabular is going to be the main product in that analytic world from Microsoft stack. What was that point when you realized that the tabular is the way to go?
I think I probably realized very early that which way tabular was going. I mean, it was probably in 2011, as soon as it was announced, that it was clear that tabular was the future. That didn't stop me still loving multidimensional. I always compare analysis services multidimensional to my first girlfriend. I will always love analysis services multidimensional. I have not written any MDX for a long. Well, I haven't really written any MDX for a long while. I have not opened Visual Studio and looked at an analysis services multidimensional project for at least 6 months, I think. But I spent so many years doing it and loving it and writing about it. It's always going to be ingrained on my brain. I think even when I'm 80 years old, I'll still have some MDX stuck in my mind that I'll still be able to write some basic MDX somehow. So it's never going to go away. I will always love analysis services multidimensional and MDX, and I will always be the first person to say what a great product it is and how there are so many things that it can do that other products still can't do. But it hasn't been developed. There were good reasons why we went with tabular and DAX. It was hard for people to understand. It was hard for people to learn. And I think we're in a much better place with Power BI nowadays. So I will always love multidimensional. You will never see me say, it's not a beautiful product, because it is. But I don't use it much anymore. And, it's going to be even more infrequent that I use it in the future.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. I also have fond memories of multidimensional.
I think I still remember my few first lines of MDX and how abstract was it when I first started to using it. So yeah, it will remain a memory, and I can think of for you because you were really deeply involved lots of years.
Yeah.
Current member and this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just one thing.
Well, I was just going to say, current member is a great example of why of where DAX is better. The fundamental problem with current member is that you could only have a single select, whereas the whole concept of values in DAX is just a fundamentally better design, and solves the problem so much more elegantly than MDX ever could.
Just thinking now, going step forward to current state of entire business intelligence in Microsoft. And I hear also Microsoft now devoted a lot of time and effort to that topic. So the question I hear a lot is how to maintain that fine line between governed BI and full self-service BI, because we know that a lot of customers are struggling with that. So what would be your recommendation? In which direction would you advise customers to go?
It depends, and I think you can't make that decision. I think your company makes that decision for you, and it's better to reframe the question and say you need to understand what option fits your company culture best, rather than just do one thing or the other, because it really it depends on so many different factors. But it's almost always the case that one extreme, the extremes of like pure self-service BI and pure corporate BI are a bad thing. Pure corporate BI just ends up with IT people driving everything and nobody getting any real business value. Pure self-service BI ends up with the kind of users driving everything, and there's no coordination, there's no standards, and everything breaks and it's all a mess and completely inconsistent. So I would say never pick the extreme. Always understand you're going to have a mix of self-service BI and corporate BI, and then think about which the kind of combination of both, the mix of both, which one is good for you. Do you have a central IT department that is willing to do BI? A lot of companies, especially smaller companies, they don't have the IT resources. Do you have a central IT department that wants to do BI? Because there are lots of cases of central IT which just wants to be a gatekeeper. It wants to stop people doing any kind of BI or reporting. So if that's the case, that kind of governs how much centralized corporate BI you do. And you also have to look at your users. Do they want to get involved in reporting? Do they want to learn Power BI? There are some companies and there are some cultures where actually, there is a ton of really motivated people who want to do reporting. And, you think there are going to be certain types of company that do this. And yeah, it's true. Maybe in financial services, there are all these people who've got maths degrees, who love Excel, and they naturally love self-service BI and reporting. But it's not all just like that. There are some companies where actually they've got a really, really amazing culture for doing self-service BI, and you just wouldn't expect it. Back when I was a consultant, I did a lot of training for a company in the UK that basically produced lots of meat products, ham and bacon and sausages and things like that. And I always really loved doing training for them, because you think, okay, it's a manufacturing company. People care about making sausages, I mean, literally a sausage factory. But the culture they had was really amazing. I mean, I just kept coming back month after month to do more training for, 10 people at a time. And there were so many really highly motivated people there who loved, they loved their job, they loved their company, but they had data. They wanted to do something with that data. They wanted to build reports. And that was the kind of healthiest example of self-service BI I saw. And, it wasn't the type of company, it was just the culture. It was the way these people were. They had great people, they were empowered, they had data, they felt able to go away and learn this tool. They had an IT department that supported them, and they were just going away and doing analytics on all of the things that were relevant for their jobs. And, it was just so nice to do training for that company because they were, really enthusiastic. And, I would always compare it. Sometimes you go to some other big corporate company where there were supposedly loads of people, with really numerate jobs, and they would get, you go and do a Power BI training course there and nobody would be interested. It would be like everybody's been forced to go on the course. Somebody's made a decision to use Power BI. Oh, we just want to carry on using Excel. And there was just no motivation there. So it really just depends on the company and how motivated people are. And you just have to make a judgment based on that.
Yeah, I will read the comment Melissa posted on YouTube stream, where she said that the goal for the usage scenarios is to show the different ways that Power BI can be used. And she said that these scenarios are the first bit of content that she and you put in this white paper for planning enterprise deployment. I would say that's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. So Chris, I need to ask you, I mean, this is probably something that a lot of people ask you, but what's the next big thing in Power BI in your opinion?
I can't tell you.
Why? Because you don't know, or is it NDA?
Probably because it's NDA.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, the reason I love my job is that I get to see how Power BI is made. And, sometimes it can be quite difficult to know which features we've talked about. You go a bit further forward, you see these long-term plans, and sometimes, the reality is nothing like the original long-term plan. But sometimes, sometimes the long-term plans, you think, oh, this is rubbish. What are these people thinking of? Sometimes the long-term plans, you think, oh, wow, that is amazing. There are some mind-blowing things that are happening in the long term. And fairly recently, I saw something pretty mind-blowing that you would not believe if I told you. And I can't tell you what it is, but there's some absolutely amazing stuff in the pipeline. Some cool stuff that maybe you'll see in 6 months and a year. Maybe something longer term, but
then we will call you again to talk about
it. I promise. But that's the great thing. I'm like I said, the cat team is a bit naughty in that we are really great at publicity. A whole load of people on the cat team go to conferences, we blog, we make YouTube videos. That's why people know us. But we're not the really clever people on the Power BI product group. There are super clever people on the Power BI product group who do amazing things, and it's a true honor to work with them. And when you work with these people and you see the ideas they come up with and some of the things they can show you, you think, oh, wow, it's just an honor to be able to see these people at work.
Yeah.
That's really good to hear. So we are looking forward to those small things. But now when you're mentioning Power BI Cat team and the advantages of your work, so what are the skills you would like somebody to have to work on Cat team?
All right, so that's a relevant comment, especially since I've been doing a lot of recruitment. You need a lot of different skills. First of all, I think you need to be passionate about Power BI. You need to live and breathe Power BI. You need to have a lot of experience with it. it doesn't matter exactly what experience. You could be great at building visuals, doing custom visuals, DAX, M, data modeling, using the APIs, all of those things. But you need to have a real passion for Power BI and perhaps, a lot of experience for, in one particular area. You need to be a good communicator. You need to be a trainer and a consultant, because if you get dropped into a situation with a customer that's angry or a customer that's unhappy, you need to not only be able to have the technical skills to solve their problems. To solve the problem, you have to understand the problem. So you have to talk to the customer. You have to understand what's going on. So there's a lot of consultancy there. And, we can't stay with the customer forever. We can't do their job for them. So there is always a certain amount of training there. So you have to, once you've understood the problem, you have to teach the customer what the solution is, help them understand what you've done so that they can carry on in the future and be successful on their own. So you need those technical skills. You need good customer facing skills. You also need, good skills to be able to take that experience and take it back to the rest of the product group. And again, that takes quite a lot of explanation, because, the big mistake that I think I made, and probably a lot other people make when they join the CAT team, is you think it's what your opinion is. It's not. My opinion is not really all that relevant. My job is to take the feedback from large Power BI customers back to the rest of the product group. And it's to talk to a large number of customers and get all that feedback and bring it back and curate it. And my technical skills are important because I need to understand what's a real problem and what is, a customer education problem. And, you've got to prepare it, present it back and process it and give it in a kind of usable format. So it's not just training customers, it's being able to kind of train the developers and the program managers as well, to be able to explain what a problem is and why it's a real problem and why it's something we need to fix, rather than just something we can ignore or something that is just the user not understanding how the product works. So it's all about communication.
Sounds really interesting. I think a lot of people will find themselves in your words listening to this webcast. So maybe you get an influx of new CVs coming in.
Yeah. Well, if there's I've literally I'm just interviewing for a couple of jobs in India. Unfortunately, those jobs have closed. If you're in India, it's too late. But probably next week I will have a job posting up in Australia. So if there is anybody from Australia watching, then watch out for a job.
New Zealand is an option, or?
Well, it might be actually.
I know a lot of great experts there, like Phil Seamark, for example.
He works for me already. So.
Yeah, he's our next guest.
Yes.
No, just kidding. Yeah. But yeah.
I know there's a ton of good people in New Zealand.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's maybe I could extend it to. The trouble is, I've got to hire in a country, and I think I've decided that Australia will be the next place. So maybe in a week's time, if you follow me on Twitter, I'll be promoting a job advert in Australia, and if there's somebody out there in Australia who's good, please apply. Love to hear from people.
But just thinking of it, when you have get-together team meetings, what time is it for you on your side of the world?
Okay, so that's always difficult. Our regular team meeting is at 8:00 in the evening, my time, which is not too bad. I mean, one of the hard things with a distributed team is all of the time zones involved. And I do spend a lot of evenings doing calls with people in the US. Not so many early morning calls, but quite often if I'm talking to Phil Seamark, I'll be talking to him either it's 8:00 in the morning, my time, or 9:00 in the evening, my time.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, Chris, to wrap it up, because we were talking about the skills and everything else, and looking at the Power BI release pace and the number of features that are being introduced on a monthly basis, do you think it is now beyond one person to have, let's say, the complete package, the all skills that are relevant? I think you already answered the question, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been like that for a couple of years now. I think at one point it used to make me a bit stressed, actually. A couple of years ago, when I suddenly realized that it was impossible for me to know everything about Power BI. But I've gone beyond that now. I'm just happy to know some things really well, some things okay, and then some things not at all. You know,
what's your secret for going beyond that? Share with us.
Meditation, just like, you know, kind of
okay.
Accept the universe. You know, be a little bit zen. You know, but you know I'm never going to be good at data visualization. I know I'm never going to be good at report design. I would love to get better. I'm sure if I spent a long time practicing, I could get a lot better. But then I need to spend all my time keeping up with all the things I am good at, you know, keeping good at Power Query and stuff like that. So, you know, you just have to let go.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind.
And just as we are closing now the full hour, and it took me like 5 minutes, so it was so great to speak with you. But to wrap it up, this introduction, so this is a bit of connected with music podcast. So just a simple question for the end. So what is the music playing in your room when you're trying to solve the most complex Power BI questions?
Oh, well, I do listen to a bit of jazz sometimes. But it tends to be kind of 70s classic rock or prog rock or something like that, or singer-songwriters and things. I've got very old-fashioned tastes. I don't like anything from the last 20 years. And as I get older, that 20-year window like goes. So I can remember, I mean, I love the Beach Boys. And I can remember in the 1990s, I loved the Beach Boys and none of the kind of indie that was happening now. Now I kind of like the stuff that was happening in the 1990s when I was young, but I still like all the stuff going back to the 1970s.
It's good to hear, and I like the taste. So yeah, thanks for being our first guest and to open with us this show. So it was really great to get to know you from a different perspective, not just reading your blogs. And it was really a pleasure, and we learned a lot with all of those answers. And hope to see you in just, 2 weeks on SQL Bits.
Yes, that just reminds me that I need to do all my preparation for SQL Bits.
Same thing.
Same as us, yeah.
Yeah. Same thing here. So thank you again very much. And just for the rest of the watchers, so stay tuned. Chris' colleague, Phil Seamark, Nicola just mentioned, is our guest in next month's episode 2 of Data Jazzers. So stay tuned. And Chris, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot,
Chris, for joining, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.